I don't think so, right? I thought you guys had analyzed it beforehand.
We're live, Weldon.
Oh.
Track and field fans that are up late, thank you for staying up late. Those of you listening via podcast on Friday morning, thank you for being the best track and field fans in the world. As Let'sRun.com Supporters Club members. If you want this as a podcast, join the Supporters Club now, Let'sRun.com/subscribe. Hopefully there's not any problems. I'm on a $25 Chromebook tonight. But what a day one of USA's. A wild one. 5 hours of prelims. I was thinking to myself, is it going to be worth it? Yes, it was. Grant Fisher goes home devastated. Cooper Teare goes home devastated. I mean devastated. No, they didn't just not win their heat. They've both been. Grant Fisher was not in the top three in the 10,000. Woody Kincaid wins it with a 4:01.67 last. They didn't just not win their heat. They've both been. Mile. Grant Fisher fades to fourth as Sean McGorty gets him at the line. Cooper Teare was in the top three in his 1,500-meter prelim. He gets passed by Drew Hunter. Yes, folks, Drew Hunter still exists as a professional runner since Cooper Teare home devastated. But if you think it's a terrible night for the Bowerman Track Club, Elise Cranny just blew the doors off Alicia Monson in the women's 10,000. Got the win there. What else? All Thing Mo had a nice PB. Matthew Centrowitz is in the final of the men's 1,500. Sha'Carri Richardson has won a world leader. Nia Akins looked amazing. And for some reason, Addie Wiley and Corey McGee were racing all out in the women's 1,500-meter prelims. A lot to get down to. Weldon Johnson, my identical twin brother, genetic equal, is here, up late despite having a newborn in the house. Weldon, thanks for being here.
Good to be here. What a night, Robert. Like you said, they saved the best for last. I mean, we knew the 10,000-meter finals were last, but man, let's start with the men's 10,000 meters. I think we have to go there.
Yep, and it was a tactical race like you would expect for most of it. Comes down to, basically the last mile. Paul Chalimo was, only three guys had the standard coming in. Woody Kincaid, Joe Klecker, and Grant Fisher. Paul Chalimo, who'd run 27:12, was in dead last at the beginning. Then he moves up to the front. I kind of wanted Chalimo to make this team, to get in the top three. But with 3 laps to go, Grant Fisher goes to the lead. And Chalimo didn't stick right on it. He was like running in the 5th or 6th. I wasn't ruling out him, though, kicking for 3rd. But then, I'm like, there's a gap between Fisher and everybody else. But about 500 meters to go, I see Klecker and them start moving back towards Fisher. And I'm like, okay, Fisher's not winning this race. Woody Kincaid is too close. And I was watching with John Kellogg, and he's like, but Fisher doesn't have to win the race. He only has to be top 3. But a lap later, you can see it coming, 100 meters to go. Kincaid was going to blow these guys' doors off and win it. And Fisher was, I don't know if it was like a panic thing or what, but his teammate passes him before they get to the finish line. Now, Fisher still could go to Worlds in the 10. McGorty is close on the world ranking. But the problem for Fisher is USATF will probably enter 4 no matter what. They always enter 4. Fisher would be the alternate. Kincaid would get in. And then if these world cross country guys, not Kincaid, McGorty would also be entered. And then if these world cross country guys don't enter, McGorty would definitely get in on ranking if he doesn't chase some time in Europe where he could still get in that way too.
Yeah. So as it stands now, McGorty needs to improve his ranking to get in, but you can still chase the time. But let's talk about the race, Robert. I mean, you kind of went through it, but 3 laps to go. Fisher to the lead, pushes it 60.44, then 59.91 to get to the bell. And at that point, Robert, I don't know about you, but I'm like, this thing's over. Were you thinking just like me at that point? because Fisher was at 27, 27, 23, and just 1 second behind him, 27, 28, 25, was Woody Kincaid. Woody Kincaid, his kick is legendary. We used to sort of doubt it. Oh, maybe he can't do it in a, I don't know, whatever the race is, whatever it is. No, he can do it any damn time. And I'm like, he's this close. This thing is over. This race is his. I mean, it's a weapon. And he's got something Grant Fisher doesn't have. And I think we're starting to appreciate now the greatness of Woody Kincaid. He left the Bowerman Track Club. He got the dominant win tonight. There was no question who was the best man in this race.
It's a big win for Kincaid, and it's a big win for Mike Smith too, right? I mean, I don't know exactly what the coaching situation is. We're hoped to be joined later in the show by Jonathan Galt, who's getting the interviews in Eugene, get the inside scoop. But I mean, I think that it's interesting from someone who used to coach at the collegiate level. There can be a team dynamic. I mean, everyone sort of, sometimes it's whether it's based on your high school accolades or your recruiting or how old you are. Someone's sort of viewed as the top dog and someone else is the second dog, and et cetera. And I don't know if it's a psychological thing or not, but one time at Cornell, we had a guy go on leave and the second dog became the top dog and was a much better runner. And I don't know if the coaching staff was catering things to Fisher or if it was just demoralizing for Kincaid to be beaten by Fisher a lot in practice. But going out on his own has clearly worked magically for him. And I guess he did beat Fisher when he was on the Bowerman Track Club at USA's. I think maybe even in the trials, which Jonathan Galt was here for that. So it's not that shocking in that. But I was thinking about this before the race, Weldon, and I was like, man, this weekend could really change things about Grant Fisher. Like when Jonathan Galt was writing the previews, he's like, I don't have Fisher winning either race. Am I stupid? I'm like, yes, based on talent level, you're stupid. But I was kind of thinking like, okay, this weekend, if Fisher just wipes the four of these guys, he's clearly better than them. But what if he doesn't? And we've seen that happen today. Like he's run incredibly fast. He's done better than these guys at Worlds, that's for sure, in terms of, battling for medals. But this just going to be a lost year for Grant Fisher? Or can he come back with a vengeance in the 5,000s? There's going to be two Bowerman Track Club runners angry as hell in that 5,000. Will there be team tactics? What will be happening? I would think not, because Cooper Teare wants that 5,000 to go slow as possible. Grant Fisher certainly doesn't want it to go slow. But what are the odds that Grant Fisher gets top three in the 5,000? I've certainly got him losing to Kincaid. I've got him losing to he beat Chalimo today, but in the 5,000? I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's possible he finishes outside the top three there as well.
Well, after today, of course, Robert. I mean, like he was pressing, but the 5.8 is going to be great. Chalimo is going to be motivated. Teare is going to be motivated. You got Newer, you got Kincaid obviously coming back. But Robert, yeah, Kincaid did beat Fisher at the 2021 Olympic trials. And Grant Fisher, well, I think I'm putting Woody Kincaid as the top American long distance runner right now. I mean, there's just no question in my mind. He's earned it. But until probably tonight, you could easily made the argument for Grant Fisher. Am I too loud, Robert?
No, it's just crackling.
And Grant Fisher, all his talent, he has one USATF title last year at 5,000 meters. So,
I mean, I hate to say it because it's not like I'm a state school blue-collar guy myself as a Princeton grad, but right? I mean, the knock on Grant Fisher would be he's kind of Stanford soft, right? I mean, despite the talent, how does he not win these races? So, it'll be magical if he turns it around someday and gets that medal, but devastating for him today. Absolutely devastating. People want in the live chat, want to know if this improves the ranking. Not really, because your ranking is only determined by your best two 10,000s, or maybe it's three. And the majority of your ranking points come from the time you ran. So I would be shocked if this third place performance in 28-24 does anything for Sean McGorty's ranking. So this isn't, he needs to either go to Europe and get on the time and try to get on, he could do a road 10K, try to run faster, or he's pretty close on the rankings coming in, but hope that some of these guys turn down their world cross country spots. So anyways, that was the women's 10,000, the men's 10,000. And the women's 10,000, Alicia Monson went to the lead with, what was it, 8 laps to go, John Kellogg? And, starts pushing the pace. She's been having a great year, but it's my understanding, and again, I'm not in Eugene. I was watching on USATF.tv. Terrible, terrible production value. Anybody that watched this live, I thought there was something wrong with my internet, and then I posted on the forum, and everyone's like, "No, my TV is stuttering too." In the 10,000, mine the clock kept going, and there was a still picture for the final couple laps in the women's 10,000, and then it would come on with 100 meters to go, and Elise Cranny apparently had gone with 300 meters to go, and just blowing everybody's doors off. So super impressive, and I think that this is really the problem. I know Alicia Monson almost won a Diamond League 3000 last year. She's been up front in the Diamond Leagues, but she just doesn't really seem to have the wheels necessary to be super competitive on the 10,000. Maybe you can get to a Worlds or even the USAs where people aren't on their A game. Because sometimes, if there aren't 3 people on their A game that are good kickers, you can still medal. But when it comes times to kick, she just didn't have it. So Cranny closes in 50. God, is that right?
Robert, Cranny's final 300 was 44.79, I think, if these splits online are accurate. That's just stunning. And maybe for all of us watching at home, it sort of worked out because she was so far ahead. I'm like, what the hell happened? But that's 60 flat pace. Alicia Monson can't do that. That's where the difference between these two are right now. Cranny, sure, she'd done nothing coming in this year, faded at the end of that 1.5K. And a lot of question marks surrounding her. But she's run 3:59 twice. She's run 30:14. Okay, fine. Monson's got the better 10K, but Monson's PB at 1,500, going to double check this. Pretty sure it's 4:07. Yes, 4:07.09. It's sort of almost like the Kincaid and the Fisher for the men's side, right? If you got similar endurance and someone's got just a much better kick, I'm going to take the person with a better kick every single damn time. But, Monson has beaten her before at the trials in 2021. Cranny was only 4th, but I think she's getting more longer endurance. You got to remember she was more of 1,500 runner in college, so she's got great speed and great endurance.
Again, on the world rankings, someone wants to know if you get bonus points for top 3. You get bonus points, but the points don't carry over to other races. You get a score point for your time today, and then the bonus points are added to that. You can't move the bonus points to another race, which would actually be an interesting way to do it the more I think about it. You're the U.S. champion. Why the hell do they care what the time was in this race? You could get those bonus points in another race, but that's not the way it works. But yeah, it was just, kind of wow. So Natasha Rogers ends up 3rd in the race because Carissa Schweizer, who had not finished a race all year, was 5th. So Rogers made the team last year. Right now, no women are supposed to get in on world ranking, but I've told Jonathan Gauld, I don't think all of these countries are going to send these people who are 33-minute 10Kers to worlds. We'll see. So if anyone gets in on ranking or not. So I made fun of Grant Fisher for being Stanford South. Bad Clam says Elise Cranny isn't Stanford South. All right, let's go to some of the other events. The big one, the men's 1500.
Wait, you're gonna? I mean, the women get that much of a recap? I mean, I guess there's probably not too much to say on this race. We thought there were 3 people coming in. I mean, there's 3 people with the standard, and it's a big Natasha Rogers. It's big for her to get third. Kaladi, same thing. I mean, Schweizer, I just don't think she's going to go. I guess if nothing changes, she will get to go in the 10. But we can get to the 1500s if you want to, Robert.
Absolutely. And I don't know how these heats are. It's supposed to be a serpentine heating. So if you have 3 heats, it would go 1, 2. The 3 fastest people in America would go 1, 2, 3. Then you go 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1 until you fill the heats. But the heat 1 was the heat of death. It had American record holder Teare Neguse, 2022 NCAA champion Joe Wascom, 2023 NCAA champion Nathan Green, 2022 World's Team member Johnny Gregorek, 2022 World's Team member Josh Thompson, Olympic champion 2016 Matthew Centrowitz. So you had 6 complete studs in this race. And the first 200 was extremely slow. And Teare Neguse was in the back. And I literally thought to myself, I go, you know what? This is idiotic for Neguse to be running in the back in this race. Absolutely idiotic. Like, you don't want to take your chances in a tactical race with this many good guys because you could be out in day 1. And right as I'm thinking that, he kind of pulls an Ingebrigtsen. Ingebrigtsen likes to run in the back on the first turn. And he just goes to the front and then just controlled this thing masterfully the entire way home. So his splits, if I can find them here, after a very slow first 200, 59.7, then he runs a 57.8, so 157.5, then a 57.11, closes in 44.7, 335.37, masterful. The American, the championship meet record is 334.0 something by Centrowitz in 2016. And it was really disappointing. I just, not only was the production value tonight on the TV terrible, the commentating was not good. And I like John Anderson and Kerry Tollefson, but John Anderson is not a play-by-play guy. They need someone to hire a professional play-by-play guy like Bill Spalding, my friend, because I don't know, after it's over, they're like, oh, they're not going to write a poem about that race. I'm like, why wouldn't they write a poem about that race? That was one of the, I know the super shoes have changed everything, but when the championship record is 334 and a guy runs 335 from the front and just looks so easy doing it, it was masterful. The only one that was on top of him was Joe Wascom, the guy that got beat at NCAAs this year. He runs 336. And then there's a mad dash for the third final qualifying spot. And Johnny Gregorek does what he's always done, time after time, not always done, but so many times, is he's running in like 5th or 6th. Some people would say it's cowardly. I don't think that. I don't know if he's running for 3rd, that's just as good as he is. But he's 5th or 6th with 100 meters to go. When it's over, he's in 3rd. And he passes Centrowitz, he passes Nathan Green, etc., and finishes 3rd with auto spot, 336.95. And it was kind of surprising to me to see, one, Centrowitz was up there the whole time. And Jonathan Galton and I were talking. He's like, I know Centrowitz hasn't run fast, but this guy's, run what, 330. Had he run 336 coming in? Well, it's run a 338. But he's like, it wouldn't surprise, John Galt said, it wouldn't shock me if he turns it on and makes this team. And he was up there throughout, kind of fades in the final 100, but ends up 6th and 337.36. And this ended up being the fastest heat of the day. And there's 3 time qualifiers. He's into the final. I was surprised at Nathan Green, who has been so good at NCAAs. I know he's young. He was kind of in 5th or 6th, and I thought he would kick up to 3rd, and he just didn't do it. But he got into the final. It's hard sometimes for the young guys. I think they emotionally get exhausted at NCAAs, whether it's not physical. So the top 6 here all get in. It's really the 6 best guys in this heat. But no doubt, Neguse looked fantastic. Wascom was quite impressive. The other 4, not nearly as impressive, but hey, they live to see another day.
Robert, I'm glad you called this a masterpiece performance by Nagus, because it was. And I didn't know the heats, until the race started, but I saw this heat. And I'm like, wow, this thing is loaded. If it's only 3 guys from this heat, you're in a load of trouble. And it went pretty slow that first 200. And then he did what you do when you're better than everybody else. Now you could argue, he could let it come down to kick. You don't want to let it come down to kick with Nathan Green. Nathan Green looked sort of average today. I mean, he makes the final, whatever. You know why? Because his PB is 337. One thing we saw today, Robert, is like, you can be a great kicker in a 337, 340 race, whatever it is. This is another level of the pros. And kicking off a faster pace is harder. Nagus just bossed everybody. Joe Wascom, great run. He was right with him to the final stretch and clear second. And, Gregoric came up. Great run. Centro, he's running 336 this year. He's still Centro in my book. He ran like he belonged, like he was going to make the final. He put himself in the perfect spot, and he just didn't quite have it. I thought it was a pretty good run from him. I'm glad to see him in the final. Our sport is better off with Matthew Centrowitz in the final.
It's great. It's going to be
wonderful.
And if you're just joining us, this is the special edition of the Let'sRun.com podcast. If you want a bonus podcast, every night we're going to be doing USA's live show. But if you want it as a podcast, you got to join the Supporters Club. Go to Let'sRun.com/subscribe today. Get a free T-shirt, much more. Okay, let's go to Heat 2. We've got Sam Prankel, Hobbs Kessler, a number of other guys. Eric Holt, who we did a profile on, Craig Ingalls, Simeon Beerbaum, a high schooler, Reinhard Harrison. And first of all, Reinhard Harrison doesn't make the team. Doesn't make it. He's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He ends up 6th. But I was super impressed by this guy. I really think that he's going to be a wonderful addition to the Oregon team. He ran in the back for the first.
You mean Birnbaum?
Excuse me, Simeon Beerbaum. He ran in the back for the first 200. But then midway through the race, he's in the lead. He ran like he belonged. It was like an Ingebrigtsen. It was smart to stay out of the trouble. Then I always said at Cornell, if you're going to make a move in the 1500 from the back to the front, make it count. So many guys make a move, try to get off, and they don't get there, and they go back. No, he went all the way to the front and just didn't have the wheels on the on the last lap. But I thought he ran a great tactical race. But coming down to it, it's a 3:42 race. It's the slowest race of the day. It's very tactical. Hobbs Kessler, the 20-year-old phenom, he was in on the rail the whole time. And, Jonathan Galt and I always go back and forth about positioning is not important and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it always opens up, at least for top 3. But even in this race, I'm like 100 meters to go. There's 7 guys there. Kessler's in on the rail, and I'm like, what's he going to do? He's behind a couple people, and I'm like, man, I might just try to pause, go all the way out to lane 3 because he should be way better than these guys, but that's pretty risky. But he did something just as risky, very cute and clever. He weaved out from lane 1, somebody slowed down, then weaved back into lane 1, moved up, got second in the heat, would make me a little bit nervous. Sam Prankel wins the heat, 3:42.78. Kessler, 3:42.95. Eric Holt, 3:42.99. Those are your qualifiers. Craig Ingalls is out at 3:43.14. Reinhard Harrison, who redshirted Oregon as a freshman this year, ran a pretty good race for him, 3:43.75. So those are your races. And I don't think Prankel's going to make this team. I know that he won this heat. He's always up there, and I don't think he's the same talent level as these other guys. But, well, then I saw a great comment on the message board. Kessler's tactical acumen still scares me a little bit. I haven't seen him run a lot of races. He didn't do the collegiate system. He is very confident. He doesn't get nervous. So maybe the fact that he didn't panic and go to lane 3 is a good thing. In that first race when he was in Arkansas, he ran 3:57 or 3:58. He's just with the pros. He's never intimidated. But someone on the message board was like, he's not great tactically, but the nice thing is he's not going to have to worry about that in the final. And do you know what they meant by that, Weldon? Because I think this is dead on.
Actually, that's a good point. Yard Nagus is just going to take this thing. It's going to be like a Diamond League race for everyone else, essentially, because these other guys aren't 3:29 runners. It's going to be like when Jakob somebody rabbits the beginning, and then Jakob takes over. So, yeah.
The Goose doesn't need to lead as much as he did today. He could wait to 700, but at some point he's not going to let it be a slow race. It would be stupidity. He should do exactly what he did today. 3 people won't beat him, and he'll be on the team. And Kessler it'll be a fairly honest race, and Kessler can battle it out with Hocker, Wascombe, and whoever else wants to do it. Because let's move to Heat 3. Heat 3, you've got Cole.
Wait. Stay here real quick 1 second. A few more comments. Yeah, John says he doesn't root. I thought Kessler was in a lot of trouble. I was like, oh, no, man, he's not going to make it. And then he showed some patience, got in there. In the final, though, like you said, a normal final, you need to have better tactics. People are making jokes here. Craig Ingles won't be in the final. Someone else can finish 4th. Well, Craig Ingles was 4th in this heat. He somehow manages to finish 4th. Usually it's in the final, but... And Birnbaum, I've never been more impressed with a kid who got, 6th place in a heat. Amazing. This thing went 206 at 800, somewhere around there. And then the high school kid takes over and drops a 57. I'm pretty sure that's what it was here. I'm just trying to pull it up. Like, that's crazy. And had the lead. No, excuse me, 55-7. I mean, that's nuts. 55-7 in the middle of a 1,500 race like this. To me, it shows, 1, you're not intimidated. 2, you got a load of talent. I mean, I guess I knew this. He's one of the greatest high school runners. I mean, he's the greatest one this year. But I was already impressed with him. But there's such a Robert, as we're talking about tonight. There's a huge gap in class between even a Nathan Green and these 1,500-meter guys. Birnbaum looked like he totally belonged. Like, wow.
Right.
But
super impressive. Super.
Go to Heat 3.
I would trust Birnbaum's tactics in any race for the rest of my life. I haven't seen enough from Kessler to trust that. But yeah, Heat 3. Take us through it, Walden.
Well, interesting comments here. But, I mean, 1,500-meter runners, Robert, they love their kicks, right? We saw this here. These guys knew coming in, you run around 337, you can get top 6 and make it. Nope, they're content to let it go. It wasn't slow, but they didn't. To get into 337, someone's really got to push it. Nobody does that. Comes down to the final lap. I think there was 8 guys in the backstretch still in contention. I mean, everybody's trying to get in spot. Cole Hawker goes out way wide into lane 2. Cooper Teare's way wide in lane 2. I mean, Cooper Teare was in decent position at the bell. Coming off the final turn, it's just 4 guys for 3 spots. And when you see this, well, who do you think is going to get the spots? Cole Hawker, phenom as an Olympian 2 years ago, as a teenager. Henry Wynn, former NCAA champion of the mile. Cooper Teare, last year's champion in the 1,500 meters, who, despite people saying, he has no kick in the 1,500, kicked a 51 in a 3:45 race. Or Drew Hunter. I mean, as you kind of joked at this thing, remember Drew Hunter? He still runs. What's Drew Hunter done at 1,500 meters? Nothing. And Hawker was clearly best. He was the only guy looking around. He gets the win. Win deserves credit because what did Win did? He took the lead at the bell, sort of centro. If it's coming down to a kick, it helps to have the lead at the bell to run the less distance. So he got caught right at the line by Hunter, and Drew Hunter was it didn't look pretty, man, but that guy showed grit. It sort of looked like I hate to use the word Steve Prefontaine, but it looked like he was really trying. They're all obviously really trying, but he was really pumping his arms. Sometimes that's bullshit, but I just was good for this kid, man. He's been through a lot. A lot of people expected him to sort of maybe be, the next great American distance runner. That doesn't look like it's going to pan out, maybe ever. But to make this final, to get ahead of Cooper Teare, great run by Drew Hunter. And Teare, I mean, it was really close at the end. I don't know what else to say.
Please move your mic farther away from you. I don't know in Teare, like, if he thought he had it. I'm like, dude, it didn't look like he was going all out and throwing himself at the line. It's weird. There's the whole thing of, like, you see it with Fisher coming 100 meters to go. Is it like a psychological? And then you panic. You're like, oh, no, they're coming. I mean, I feel like that's almost it. It's like there's got to be a psychological component to that, right? Or is it just I say it's never psychological, but it's like, oh, no, they're coming. I'm like, dude, just throw yourself at the damn line. Because – anyways, and then immediately I started a message board thread. And I thought, does this prove Jerry Schumacher's right? I mean, the whole joke was he joins the Bowerman Track Club. Teare does this year. But he's like, yeah, I think I'm a 1,500 meter. My coach thinks I'm a 5,000 meter runner. And then I'm like, well, now you looks like you're a 5,000 meter runner. But then I'm like, well, should we blame Jerry for not coaching him better in the 1,500? But, some of these splits are kind of interesting because just about how good Nagoose was. 40.77 for the final 300. That was in a 3:35 race. That was faster than everybody in the entire rate, all these other races, which were 3:39 and 3:42, except for Cole Locker, who closed 40.49. So Drew Hunter had 40.77. He had the same time for the last 300 as Nagoose. But again, this is a 3:39 race versus a 3:35 race. So Drew Hunter made a ton of money coming out of high school. Good for him. He just had a child. My father-in-law always says the men, when they have a child, they step their game up. He stepped his game up. It's great to see him in the final. I don't think he's going to make the team. In terms of the team, Nagoose is an absolute lock for me. I think Hawker's kick's too good not to make it. I wasn't really pleased with his and Teare's tactics. I thought they were too far back in this race. Like, you don't need to run in last, but I think Hawker's going to make it, and I guess Kessler, but I wasn't thrilled with Kessler. But again, I think Kessler would do a lot better in an honest race from the gun. Who else has the fitness to run a 3:32? If Teare was in the final, he'd have a very good shot in that race because it would have been just like the LA Grand Prix race where it's a fitness test instead of, a tactics test. But
I mean, Robert, we always talk about with Jakob Ingebrigtsen, is he vulnerable? You're sort of giving this away to Yard Nagoose. But Matthew Corcini, I'm not sure how to say his name, Corkin, says, guys, Hawker wins this on Saturday. I don't think you can rule it out, Robert. I think Nagoose, he still should take the lead, run like that. That's his best way to make sure he makes the team. Making the team is still the priority. Do that. But Robert, Hawker's kicked. He looked good today. He looked good in that Portland meet. Do you think Nagoose is definitely 2 seconds better than him? I mean, your stats are pretty good, pointing out how Nagoose pretty much kicked as good as anyone else, even though his heat was much faster. And he did it all solo.
And he wasn't kicking for anything. Yeah. What did John and I got when we discussed the World Championship final and Jakob Ingebrigtsen? We always say, look, I mean, a rabbit's worth like a second a lap. So you need to be 2 to 3 seconds better than everybody else if you're going to try to front run it, for sure, to be guaranteed victory. But he is 2 to 3 seconds better than everyone else. He's run 3:29 flat. I know Hawker's run 3:30 in the past, but this year he's only run 3:33 or 3:34. I think he's getting closer to that. But again, Nagoose doesn't have to win the thing. He only has to be top 3. I think Nagoose is going to front run it. I think he's going to win it. I don't think, that's what we're going to see.
Yeah, Matthew, the poster said, I was unsure of Hawker, but after seeing his interview, I'm convinced. So post-race interviews are going up right now on Let'sRun.com. Someone asked about Cooper Teare. Jonathan Galt reports from Eugene that Cooper Teare did not stop in the mix zone. So I guess he pulled is that a Blankenship? Is that what we call that these days? What do we call that?
The lack of professionalism from so many runners and from you. I know USATF doesn't pay the salaries like the NBA where they mandate interviews is disgusting to me. The number of people that refuse to talk. We should just keep a running list just today. Who was it? Well, the big names. Sydney McLaughlin didn't do it. Sha'Carri didn't do it. I mean, like Sydney McLaughlin, she can't come through the mix zone and talk about her 400. Why not?
Robert, that's pretty common. It's after round one. Centro used to come through and said, I'll talk after the final. I don't think it's a huge deal, but all right, a couple more things in the 1500, Robert. Would you take Centro making the team at 600 plus 600 betting odds? So essentially 1 out of 6.
No, I would
16%
not.
of the time. Yeah, I don't think so. I think he makes it about 10% of the time, somewhere in there.
But it's going to be amazing for next year because if he can keep his momentum up, I mean, Wascom looks good. Nathan Green's a super talent. What will Teare do now? I really wish Teare could be placed in the final. I'd like to see if he could make this team. We've been texting Jonathan Gull trying to get him to stop doing the interviews. Apparently, the Grand Fisher interview has just gone up. But all right, let's talk about some of these other races. Men's 800 was, I mean, there was really, in all the other races, there was no surprises in terms of the 800s and the mid-distance and distance races. Like all the top seeds made the final. That doesn't mean you don't learn anything, but you know, the 5 guys or the 6 guys that have run the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5 guys that everyone thinks is going to make the men's 800 meter team all look great. Will Sumner went wire to wire. Bryce Hoppel went wire to wire. Clayton Murphy looked fantastic. Had the fastest time of the day. Isaiah Jewett won heat 4, and Isaiah Harris was right behind Hoppel. So those guys were all fantastic. My biggest takeaway here was when Sumner can lead, he's very good. I don't think he'll be able to lead the final unless he goes out faster than he's used to going out. But those top 5 guys were fantastic, and that's going to be where your team comes from.
Yeah, I mean the takeaway from the 800 I thought was like Brandon Miller struggled to make the final, got in on time, didn't look great, but we've seen it before. Excuse me, not the final, the semifinal. Got a new training environment, so there's question marks, but we've seen guys struggle in one round in 800, come back, be fine the next round. So I wouldn't 100% write him out, but he didn't look very good. And you know, with the change in training, there's question marks. So
Wait, I think we forgot to talk about the women's 1500.
Oh, yeah, we're getting there. But that was my takeaway from the men's 8. Women's 8, I think we can do very quickly. Then we'll get to the women's 15. Well, also in this one, sort of heat 1 was loaded. You had Rosen Willis, Thingmo, and Raven Rogers all in this heat.
Not a thing, Mo. Ajay Wilson. That might
Excuse
help.
me, Ajay Wilson. It's getting late, people. And they took the top 3 spots. Raven Rogers, been a lot of question marks in her coming in. She looked great. Took the heat, so I have a lot less concerns from her. I was glad to see that. I mean, Raven Rogers, she just knows how to run well at Hayward Field. But Nia Akins, wow. She may break him up. I mean, granted, it's a heat, but she's undefeated this year of the Brooks Beast. And she looks fabulous. She's in, what's this, heat 3? She runs, only person on the day under 2 minutes. She runs 1:59.09. I don't know why you need to pour it on like that, but just the dominant, looks very good. I mean, maybe you could argue, Nia, you're wasting your energy. Save something for the final, but for the semis and the final. But that was my takeaway from the 800. Charlene Lipsy on the comeback trail won her heat, looking pretty good. You know, I mean, if you read the previews, you sort of probably were on the lookout for her, but I think that continues. You know, whereas like Michaela Rose, the NCAA champ, didn't look great. I wouldn't read maybe too much into that. She probably hasn't, you know, raced in a while. So still hope for her, but you better be watching E. Aikens going forward. I'll say that much.
Undefeated on the year, former UPenn product. Looked amazing. I don't know why she did that. She didn't need to do it, but it made me think she could make the team. Someone asked about Michaela Rose. I picked her to make the team. I didn't think she looked good. She made me think that was a mistake to pick her on the team. You can still change your picks. If you haven't entered the prediction contest, you can enter up through Saturday night because we're just picking the finals. So, that was that. But basically, all of the top seeds did make the final, the 159. Now, folks, we're pleased. We've just been John and Weldon and I are getting old. We should not be on the show past midnight. We're finally joined by this smarter guy. He's actually doing real journalism in Eugene. Jonathan Galt. It looks like you're in Hayward Field, John.
I am. I'm in section 217, something like that. Hopefully the Wi-Fi is good enough. If not, let me know. I'm impressed you guys are still up. It's almost 1 a.m. on the East Coast. Just finished talking to Woody Kincaid and Grant Fisher. What do you guys want to know?
Everything, John. First, I want to know what to say. I want your general impressions of the night.
Okay, well, general impressions of the night. The 10K, the men's 10K ruled. That last lap was amazing. Teare goes home devastated. I mean, that to me, I think is the story of the prelims, right? He gets leaned out. And that's why the 1500 is so awesome. I was watching that. I was like, okay, I'm not sure if I like having only 3 time qualifiers, but man, did it make for some intense racing in those 1500 prelims between the first heat, Centro being on the bubble the whole time, and then Teare being edged out. He didn't talk to the media afterwards, Teare, by the way, so don't know if anything went wrong. And Sha'Carri Richardson, my God, looked amazing. Those were sort of my big takeaways from day one.
We haven't even mentioned Sha'Carri, although I said it in the prelim. But with, it's kind of interesting with Teare. Remember back in the Olympics, John, we were there in Tokyo. It was the Brit, Josh Kerr, only got out of the first round on time, ended up winning a medal. So if Teare had gotten into the final, he, particularly with a race rabbited by Nagus, he might have been able to make the team. But he goes home devastated. Okay, but come on, men's 10,000. You're talking about Teare. He still lives another day, at least in the 5,000. Grant Fisher, I guess he might make the team because of the standard stuff. But to me, I had to say it. This was Stanford soft. Like, I guess he did go. He closed his last 3 laps. Every lap was faster than the other. What did he go, 59, 58, 57, or 60, 59, 58? But for him not to finish top 3 was shocking to me. More shocking than Teare not making the final. What did he have to say?
Yeah. So, it was 60.4, 59.9, 58.3 for the last 3 laps for Fisher. Tactically, I thought that would have been my strategy essentially, but he was very disappointed. He said that he wanted to squeeze it down, and he was hoping that by taking it with 3 laps to go, he'd be able to put the hurt on maybe dull the kick of his rivals. And he said it just ended up backfiring. Instead of having it dull their kick, it basically just fried him, and he didn't have enough left. He didn't budget his energy well enough to have anything to kick on that last lap. And he was very upset. He's like, he was not happy with it. He said he's going to be thinking about that one for a while, I think, especially after last year, how it played out, him and Klecker, and he ends up getting beat. So he was frustrated.
Now,
the 5K, John, we already had who are our contenders? I think we
got Klecker, we got Kincaid, we got a fresh Abdi Noor, and now you got Teare coming back, because that he has to run the 5K now, and he'll only have 1 round of the 1500 in his legs.
I mean, there's sort of 5 guys, right, for those 3 spots. I mean, there's a chance Grant Fisher doesn't make the world's team. I mean, that would just be unbelievable. But John,
McGordy too. McGordy's in the 5K. We didn't even think about him because he hadn't raced all year, but he looked great. He told me afterwards, he said Jerry Schumacher about a week ago sat him down and was just like, this is the fittest you've ever been. He felt he really believed in him, and he's had a few injury issues. I thought, he said they were fairly minor, but it prevented him from racing this year. But he said his altitude camp just recently was amazing, and he showed it today. He was brilliant.
But is Grant Fisher's training not going well?
So Grant, I asked him that. I was like, you had such an amazing year in 2022. Things just not go. He's like, well, it's hard to have a career year every year, was essentially his point. And he also said the level has gone up in the United States. Kincaid is better than he was a year ago. Klecker is better than he was a year ago. McGordy's better than he was a year ago. I think it's a combination of Grant not being quite as good and these other guys also stepping up their games.
Okay, you're the expert on the world rankings. Where's McGordy on the rankings?
Yeah, McGordy, he's got some work to do. He's close enough that if he takes a shot at a fast 10K between now and July, he might be able to get enough points. But as it currently stands, he's not in. His performance tonight was not strong enough. And I talked to him, I was like, would you chase it? And he says it kind of depends on the 5K, because I think the 5K, it will be easier for him to get in or to get a standard. The 10K, you'd have to find a road race or you'd have to stage an event. There aren't really many options for him to do a race. You know, maybe Jerry Schumacher could set something up, but he basically said that's kind of TBD. I'm going to see if I make the team in the 5K first, and then we'll decide whether how I chase it in the 10K. But he, as it stands right now, he's not on the team.
Yeah, we didn't give him enough credit. No races coming in. I mean, I didn't even mention him on the poll we put up on the homepage. Who will win the 10K? Just great run. We forget how talented this guy is. He has as many NCAA titles as Grant Fisher, right, John?
That's right. They're both one-time NCAA 5K champs. He beat Fisher, actually. That McGordy's senior year in 2018, he beat Fisher to win that title.
So, I mean, great run by him. I'm just still shocked the guy who hadn't raced beat Grant Fisher. I don't care. People were saying, "Oh, it's a tough night for Bowerman." Well, McGordy did great.
Cranny was amazing.
Cranny, my God, John. I think she ran a 44.79 the last 300. Is that correct?
I don't know, but she breezed that thing. I mean, she put 5 seconds on Monson. She was phenomenal, and she'd been having a pretty awful season to this point. You know, remember a couple weeks or about a month ago at that UCLA meet, she just fell apart over the final kilometer, and she said afterwards, yeah, that was a really bad race. Had to go to altitude, basically get my head straightened back on. But like what McGordy said, her altitude camp went well. I think she was feeling a bit more confident coming in. But yeah, with how her season was going, I didn't think she had that in her. And she's just a championship performer at USA's. Like, I always look at the start. I'm like, I think Schweizer might be a little better than her. Or I think Monson, look how Monson set the American record. She shows up to USA, she wins. She won the 5K the last 2 years. Now she's the 10K champion, and she's going to have a great shot in that 5 as well.
And
I'm looking at the world rankings right now for McGordy. He's the first guy out, like in terms of. Well, I guess he's not the next. There's 2 other guys.
If he gets some scratches ahead of him, he might be okay. It's kind of we did talk to someone from USATF about this because it was regards to Natasha Rogers, whether she has a chance to go. They essentially said, like, there's sort of a pre-declaration phase where all the federations will say, hey, these are all the people would like to run. If they can, World Athletics will come back to them and say, okay, here are the people who are scratching. So that made me think that Rogers and McGordy might have a better shot at going. McGordy can kind of control his destiny a little bit more because he doesn't have to run good, whereas Rogers, to know 100% she's in, she would need to get the standard. But it's a messy situation in the 10K this year. Can't hear you, Weldon.
Let's keep the show going. We're about to talk about the women's 1500. We haven't talked about that, or the steeplechases, and Sha'Carri. So, but women's 15, the big story for sure has to be Athing Mu, right? Running 4:10 PR, getting third in her heat. But I think closely related for distance people, Addie Wiley winning that heat. She's 19 years old. She just, like, I don't know what her and Corey McGee were like battling the line for, but she looked better than Athing Mu, I'll say that much. And she's younger than Athing Mu, but all the other favorites made the final, essentially. Nikki Hiltz looked great. Sinclair Johnson looked great. Heather McLean, coming back from injury, looked pretty good. So we're going to have a great final, and I think Mo is in it.
Well, she qualified for the final. She did not commit to running the final. So TBD whether she'll be running it or not.
Look, I think Mo running a big 6-second PB was nice, but she's not competitive in this race. I'm glad that she competed. I hope that she does run the final. She'll be completely uncompetitive. But this Addie Wiley story, there's a backstory that may or may not ever be told that is kind of so disturbing. Huntington University scandal and everything. It's almost hard for me to celebrate, but how good she is. I mean, I don't know what was going on, John. Did you talk to her, Corey McGee? Why were these two women racing it out? Like, it was an all-out race for the finish. But Corey McGee, who has been sensational this year, just ran a 4:18 mile, could not kick past Addie Wiley. They both closed in 42 seconds. 42:32 for Wiley, 42:42 for McGee, 4:09 race. This made me think that Wiley could make it. She looked great in Nashville, but I was kind of looking at those splits. I'm like, wow, she had a big kick there. But I'm like, no, that's not like Diamond League level. But I saw it today, and I'm like, I'm not going to rule her out for making the team. But did they explain what they were thinking, John?
I didn't actually get a chance to talk to either of them because I was talking to Mo the whole time. So I can't weigh in on what was going on there. But yeah, it's always weird to see people battling for a meaningless spot or meaningless like win in the heat. But yeah, I don't know. Sorry.
Heather McLean did look
guess,
amazing. But what did all thing Mo say? There's sorry for the stagger. We'll not keep talking to each other. I think I'm delayed on this $200 Chromebook.
Yeah, I think Mo was great. Many of the big stars today blew off the media. Sha'Carri Richardson said she wasn't going to be talking until Sunday. Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone did not speak. Cooper Teare didn't speak. Trayvon Bromell didn't speak. But Mo stood there 10 minutes, answered a bunch of questions. She essentially, she was talking about training under the Bobby Kersey in the 1500. And, she's doing the 800 as well, obviously, but not at this meet. And she was like, look, Bobby, I've seen people say this, that he doesn't know the 1500, but the guy, he's a great track coach. And it's not like he just sticks his head in the sand and picks up a 1500 training plan. Like, he'll read stuff. She essentially thinks that he's smart enough about the sport to coach her well in the 1500 meters. And she also said it's all still up in the air for like what she's going to be doing long term. Like, she said it could absolutely be she does the 800 400 next year. That's something TBD. And the other thing I asked her is basically like, why did you change coaches? Because Milton Mallard, she'd won the Olympic title under him, she won the world title under him, just has never lost an 800 as a pro under Milton Mallard. And she said, she just thought it was time to move to a more professional environment. That's still a college setup. And she saw that there was a possibility of working with Bobby, so she took it. But yeah, she has a lot of faith in him, and she's feeling pretty good about where things are at, I think.
Did Bobby reach out to her as a Nike deal? I wonder how that came about.
Well, I don't know I don't think Bobby's tied to any shoe company, because Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone is a New Balance athlete. They've got some other, Jenna Prandini's Puma, but it sounded to me like Bobby might have been the one who reached out to her, but I didn't get exact clarification on that.
Shows he's a pretty smart man if he did. People are asking here in the comments, John, what happened to Marvin Bracey Williams?
I did not get a chance to talk to him. I was doing a different interview, but he was, he might be hurt. I mean, you run that slowly. I assume there's some sort of injury, but I don't know.
Yeah, he pulled up with something, but I guess it could be a cramp or it could be something seriously. But
he's had bad races this year already, so my guess is he's not totally healthy. And what about Bromell? He didn't stop to talk, but people were saying he did something with his foot after the race. Were you guys watching that 100 prelim closely? Like, did anything look wrong with Bromell to you?
No, I didn't know. I just saw he qualified.
Okay, because Noah also in that event. I don't know if you guys talked about the 100. Noah Lyles said he got COVID basically at the New York City Grand Prix, and he didn't train for the next week. He said he only started working out again on Sunday. So this was his, he'd done a few workouts since then, but he said it's the second straight year he's got COVID coming into USA's.
And before we get to the women's 100, we have not even talked about it. Teare Richardson. I don't want to brag too much because I said she would win the world championship this year, but we got to do the steeplechases real quickly. Men's steeple, I think there's really nothing to talk about. All the favorites made it. Women's steeple, Carissa Schweizer. Courtney Frericks struggled to make the final, but she fell like maybe 2 laps in. John, did you get a chance to talk to her? Like, was that an excuse? Like, she looked like it didn't look that bad of a fall, but I'm never going to like dismiss someone when you fall in a damn steeplechase. So
I did not talk to her, but Dave Ross did. The interview should be up on our YouTube channel. And she told him, yes, she fell, but she was aware of what the time was she needed. And getting up from that fall kind of reminds me of Sean McGorty at the Olympic trials a couple of years ago. She was not freaking out about being in the top 5. She was just making sure she got the time. So that was her explanation. I tend to believe that, but I didn't actually talk to her specifically.
Wow. Watching on TV, I thought, is there a chance she knows the time and it can get like top 8 or whatever it was? Kudos to her. And one other thing on the time, we talked about this with the 1500, how Cooper Teare just missed it. John, in the 1500, there are no more time qualifiers, correct, at Worlds?
Correct.
So USATF still had time qualifiers. That would have been interesting. If we had the Worlds rules here, Centro would be out of the final, Cooper Teare would be in because they would take 4 from each heat. They might even take 5, right? To do 15 final? I don't know what they would do.
No, they'd take 4.
Just sort of interesting thing. But okay, that makes it more interesting. If Courtney's, she's coming in, she said she had a PR in practice, whatever that means. People want to know about the Quigley DNS. I think she just released a statement saying she had an injury, right, on social media.
People were confused about that. Injuries have been a humongous problem for her the last 5 years. So that would be the most logical explanation. It's unfortunate because she'd actually been running pretty well to this point this season. I thought she might have a chance to do something this meet.
Good. John, I mean, you probably have time to be on Twitter, and I hate to constantly harp on commentating, but the whole broadcast tonight was terrible in the sense of there was a lot of stuttering, everything. I'm complaining about the stuttering. Meanwhile, I'm stuttering tonight on my $20 Chromebook, but I'm not charging people for this. But there's a lot of stuttering on the broadcast, and then some of the commentating just didn't make any sense. Like, they didn't have any concept that Frericks fell in the steeple. In the men's 10,000, they were debating whether they were going to go for the 27:10 time, like 5 minutes into the race. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then in the men's 1500, they were debating like who had the time qualifiers like 3 or 4 minutes after the last heat. I'm like, I knew 800 meters into every heat that the like second and third heats that they weren't getting the time qualifiers. Like, I know something like 5 or 6 minutes before it comes to them, and it's just I don't know. Like, I just, it was infuriating to me.
All right, well, Weldon, we've waited long enough. Take your victory. I mean, it's only the first round, but Teare Richardson personal best in still conditions. Like, if she had a tailwind, that might be a 10.5 or low 10.6. It was 0.1 tailwind, so she looked phenomenal.
Granted, this was at Hayward. The sprint times at Hayward are always weird, but at Worlds, we didn't see that quick of times last year. So what the hell happened?
We saw fast 200s. The hundreds last year at Worlds weren't crazy fast. The hundreds, I mean, look at the men's hundreds today. They weren't crazy fast. Like, this was just a really fantastic run by Teare, I think.
Yeah, 10:71. I mean, I'd seen the time before I saw the race. Sorry, John, I was not sitting at my computer for 6 hours today watching all the heats. But if you guys want to watch the stuff, if you ever thought about getting a USATF TV subscription, well, it'll be different for the next few days because a lot of it will be in Peacock. But like, you can watch every race on demand. You can click on it. You can actually watch us watching a lot of these at 1.5 speed. But and she ran 1071. I thought she'd be even further ahead than she was. But I mean, it's just a stellar performance. There was question marks coming in. She hadn't raced since the 1st of June, right? I mean, like the first week of June, I think. So, and she'd been racing a lot in Africa before that. So the people, were like, oh, maybe there was a niggle or something. No. She just decided to back off, focus on this thing. And if you guys remember last year, nothing ever happens in the first round of 100 meters. Oh, wait. Sha'Carri Richardson bombed out of the first round of 100 meters last year. Bombed out. And now she's dropping 1071. Like, now she just needs to not get in the way. I'm sorry. Just don't false start, Sha'Carri. I just jinxed her. Holy crap. Like, just take your time. I thought maybe Noah Lyles was doing that in the round today. He got such a bad start. But take your time. We need her at Worlds. All the Jamaican fans, come on and admit it. You want her at Worlds. And I think the way she's looking now, she's the favorite for the World Championships.
I mean, if Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price isn't going to race, if Elaine Thompson-Herah is barely racing, I think you're right. I mean, Toulouse is still running well, but yeah, man, she looked good today. And it would be a disaster for her if she doesn't make the team at this point. Also, Weldon, do you realize there's a non-zero possibility that a Tracksmith sponsored athlete is going to win the men's 100 meters at the United States Championships?
I've seen that.
I mean, it's more than non-zero. The way Crevant Charleston is running this year, it's a legitimate shot, I think, especially if Noah Lyles is coming back from COVID.
And John, do you think he'll be Tracksmith tomorrow, or do you think he'll be signed with somebody?
This is the interesting thing. Like I was
Usually
talking
how
to
that
him.
works.
Well, I'm kind of surprised he's still with Tracksmith right now. He was very grateful. He's like, oh yeah, they paid for my trip out here. They paid for my lodging. He's like, that's not cheap these days. But like he's been running. If people who I know the shoe execs have been paying attention to this, he's been running fast. He's been winning races all year. The fact that he doesn't have a contract at this point is kind of surprising to me. But I don't know. I actually don't know the particulars with Tracksmith. Can he just sign a deal with Nike before the final and he's good, or does he have to wear their whole thing? Yeah,
I can double check. Tracksmith, founded by my Yale teammate Matt Taylor, but it's pretty much they get free gear, then the better guys get some travel, maybe some money and bonuses, but I'm not even sure about that. But when you're unsponsored, a free trip is better than paying your own way. I mean, Matt's a genius. Like, man, if all I got to give a dude is free gear and travel, a guy this good, yeah, I would do it too myself. But I mean, it's a great story, and it would be kind of cool if he could keep it going. You know, Tracksmith has won a Diamond League in the hurdles before, but to win the USA 100, oh my God, that'd be just like egg on the face for all the shoe execs.
Yeah, and he's never made a U.S. final, and he never made an NCAA final at NC State.
Yeah, like what's his story? Who's he training with? What's different? You know, like people. I guess some people would say, "Hey, what's going on here?" You know,
his explanation. So he trains with Alan Johnson, who was his college coach at NC State and is now the coach at North Carolina A&T. So that's who he works under. And his explanation was essentially, well, this is the right time. This is the time that God has chosen for me to shine. And the the thing that's connected to that is basically injuries. He's like, yeah, I've had injuries the last few years. I've been healthy and everything's just been going my way this year. So that was his thing. He's like, he's healthy and been consistent this year and things are going great.
There's a comment here by Brandon Garner. Wants us to talk about the two high schoolers making the next round of the women's 100. I'm going to butcher her name, John. Mia Bra-Peterson.
That's about as good as that's what I would call it. Oh, sorry. I should say, I've been calling him Crevant Charleston. He actually clarified it's Crevant Charleston. So that's something everyone should know when he wins the 100 tomorrow night. It's Crevant. Yeah, I mean, the high schoolers, I fully expected Shawnee Jackson, to make the next round. I mean, she's run well under 11 seconds this year, and Peterson ran well as well. She was in Shikari's heat, so I think maybe kind of got lost in that. But making the semifinals of the USAs as a high school athlete is super impressive. So I don't know what else more to say, but I think Peterson surprised me a little bit more. But she'd also run like 11 flat this year, so that's not a huge surprise that she would advance, right?
Yeah, they both ran 11:05 today, and she barely had a win, 0.1 win. She was in Shikari's heat. Shawnee Jackson's run 10:89 this year. She had a 2.1 win today, but I think I was coming in thinking I put a poll up on the homepage, and I think I have Shanti Jackson as like a possible person to win the damn race. No. We know who's winning now, but like that's how good she's been running, and there's very few U.S. women under 10:9 this year. Other people are pointing out, did you notice what Willis was wearing today in the 800 women's 800?
Well, yeah, but I knew she was going to be wearing that. She announced she has an NIL deal, and I talked to her agent Ray Flynn about it, and essentially, in the collegiate season, she's required to wear Stanford gear, and that means Nike shoes. But outside of the collegiate regular season, it's kind of up to the athlete. If New Balance wants to pay for her to come to this meet, she will wear New Balance. If Stanford is covering the costs, then she'll wear the Stanford stuff. And I think in this case, New Balance basically, they wanted her in that kit at this meet, so they're covering the expenses and she's competing. And I got to give credit her and Juliet Whitaker, the two Stanford freshmen. I thought running this meet could be a mistake. I thought they might be cooked after their collegiate season, but both of them said the big break between NCAAs and now, and for Whitaker, it was even longer because her season ended at regionals. They said that allowed them to get back into training. Willis said she's been sleeping a little bit more. She basically said she pulled 2 all-nighters at NCAAs and still finished 4th because she just couldn't sleep. So Willis said that she thinks she's in the best shape of her life at the moment. And she was a world junior champion last year. So I thought it was a great job by both of them to advance, but the real test is going to be tomorrow because making that final is going to be brutal.
Well, wait. Oh, my God. I said this is going to be a 30-minute show. We're 107 in here. Got to keep going with the questions here, John, real quick. What about the attendance today?
It was poor. I got a couple pictures of it. It's funny, like in the media zone, a couple of the journalists were like, wait, I haven't seen you tweet out any attendance pictures yet. Apparently that's my thing now. But I also felt maybe on a Thursday afternoon, a meet that lasts for 7 hours and begins at 3 p.m. local time, it's a little unfair to expect them to pack the place. But yeah, it wasn't very good. There was a big Bowerman section for the 10Ks, but yeah, I'll kind of be judging them on Saturday and Sunday attendance because I was talking to some people. They said they were expecting like 6,000 to 8,000 Saturday, Sunday, which would be a huge improvement from last year. So yeah, but not a ton of fans. Probably a couple thousand tonight.
I forgot. Last year was embarrassing, right?
Oh yeah, it was terrible.
We're still in the COVID sort of deal.
No, not last year. Last year was, I think, the explanation that was floated was Eugene fatigue because they had NCAAs, they had the pre-classic, and then they were going to have Worlds. Whereas this year, they didn't have NCAAs. The pre-classic is later this year, and there's no World Championships. So it sounds like there's going to more of a desire to actually get here for this meet, but that's TBD.
It's not Eugene fatigue. Any diehard track fan, why in the world would you fly out to Eugene for USAs and then fly back for Worlds? You're going to pick one of the two, and it's going to be Worlds if you've never been to Worlds. I know one guy who emailed me and said I went to USAs because it was cheaper, but that's why there was no attendance there. The insanity, it's just a joke.
John, you said there was a Bowerman section, like cheering section? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, Weldon, it might have been a while since you were at a meet in Eugene, but it's not uncommon. They'll, a lot of the Bowerman friends and family they'll have the same T-shirt. They'll sit in the same area. It's they've been doing this for a while now.
People love to piss on Bowerman. Here we go. Brent Radicke saying the biggest loser today is Charles Hicks. BTC stock going down. Bowerman, look, Grant Fisher had a bad race, But otherwise, okay, Schweizer.
Well,
I'm buying her. Oh Jesus, Cooper Teare. Never mind.
Cooper Teare, Schweizer, and also, I mean, you add this up to it. Woody Kincaid leaves Bowerman and immediately pace everyone in the 10K. I mean, he won the 10K at this meet 2 years ago with Bowerman, so I don't know how much credit you get, but the fact that he's having like the season of his life so far after leaving Bowerman, he gave Jerry credit. He was basically like, yeah, I did a lot of work with them that helped get me to this level, but he was also like, things have been great with Mike Smith and he feels super strong and is very pleased with how things have been going.
Okay, these guys are right. Big picture, not the best, but Elise Cranny, I did not expect that. She smoked Alicia Monson, and I did not, and under no way in hell did I expect Sean McGorty to make the team. So you give some, you take some. But any final thoughts? I think we got to wrap this one up. If you guys want this as a podcast, the vast majority of people who listen to this podcast, because they're supporters, club members, join today. Use code Club25 to save 25% if you want for the first year. Robert, are you driving home tonight, Robert? I know the office isn't close to your house. I think maybe you should just sleep in the office.
I'm driving home. I'm worried about writing the recaps.
I know. I feel bad for you guys. It feels late for me out here. It's only 10:30. You guys, I don't know how we're going to be managing this, but we'll get it done, I'm sure.
I'll be putting out the podcast. I'm not writing anything else. Sorry to say. But
all right. Well, this was
guys.
a fun day one. I mean, a bunch of stuff happened. Got to get some updates on some athletes we haven't seen for a while. I really enjoyed that men's 10K. I mean, you guys had fun with that race, right? That last lap was it ruled, right?
Oh, wait. Oh, John, we haven't said this. At the bell, it was over, right? Did you know it was over?
I was watching in the mix zone. I was standing right next to Kyle Merba. I said, Woody's winning this race. And I was proven correct.
He was just, I've never seen him that close to the front. I'm like, this is over 100%.
Yeah.
All right. Glad we all agree.
Anyone watching live, how bad has my camera been? My wife has told me not to buy another computer. I have two $1,500 computers at the repair shop. I thought I could get by in this $500 Chromebook, but it's not working very well.
I mean,
maybe
Robert, I
tomorrow
can
I'll
see
get my
you.
phone.
It looks like you have green highlights, basically.
Yeah, but Walden's been talking over me. It's been like a delay or something.
No, it's 2 a.m.
All right, guys. Good night from Eugene. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We'll have more of this tomorrow. Men's and women's 100 finals tomorrow night. That's the big story. So until then.